check, 1, 2. Oh, it's working. And Kallie, you can grab the mic off the stand there. And you guys don't have to stand. Like, you could totally sit. Yeah. Okay. Are you going to stand, Tim?
I'll probably get tired after.
Okay. All right, so welcome at, oh, hi. You gonna go play? Yeah, okay. Welcome to Tim and Kallie. It's really exciting to finally actually be talking to you guys for real. Although we have appreciated technology and being able to touch base with you over the last few years while you're in Bolivia. In case any of you don't know, I first met Tim and Kallie in about 2017 or 2018 when they were presenting in Prince George at First Baptist Church, which was my last church, and was so just utterly impressed by them. I love these guys, and then I had the amazing opportunity to go to Bolivia for 10 days and just be toured around and be shown so many amazing things and taken out for dinner. And I'm excited for you guys to like really meet these people, and excited that they've expanded their family since I first met them. So I'm just going to let you guys sort of say whatever you've come to say, and then hopefully there'll be time for people to ask you a million questions. Yeah.
Thank you, David. So we're Tim and Kallie. We work for CBM, Canadian Baptist Ministries. Are you guys new to CBM? Right. Okay, so you know it well. Awesome. So we'll get to share a bit about Bolivia and the context where we work there. Here's Bolivia, the yellow country right in the middle of South America. Bolivia is landlocked by 5 other countries, very diverse with the Andean mountains, with the tropical Amazonian region, and other places in between that really shape culture. The cultural context of Bolivia shifts because of that geography as well. Language shifts. Bolivia has about 37 national languages, I believe. Yeah, so they're not all in the cereal box the way we have ours on in Canada, right, the two. But they try and recognize that there is a diversity of people, groups in the country. So I will give you a 3-minute history of 200 years of Bolivian history, and then a bit of history of the Baptists who have been there. So Bolivia got its independence in 1825. So if you do the math, that is 200 years this year. That was with Simón Bolivar, so a bunch of countries were liberated. They were set off on their own trajectory as a nation, but they still had challenges ahead of them. We have some Chileans here, so there was, I don't usually say it, but there was the War of the Pacific, right? And Bolivia lost its beloved ocean to Chile and Peru, and there's still some tension about that in that time. Afterwards, they had a system of serfdom, so it's not quite slavery, but when you sold a parcel of land, the people who worked that land went with it. They were tied to it. In 1952, there was a revolution that redistributed the land, and kind of made a shift at that time. A lot of things were privatized soon after, throughout the 70s and 80s. And then more recently, there was a shift. There was a shift with a new president named Evo Morales, who led different movements. In 2001, there was the water wars, where a US company came in, purchased the rights to all the water of the city we live in, Cochabamba. So even rainwater in a rain barrel would technically be owned by this company. People took to the streets, and the company eventually pulled out. Bolivia has a lot of natural gas. They're second to Venezuela for natural gas. And in 2003, there was the gas wars, they called it. The same thing happened where they were exporting their product and then buying it back. And there was, again, protest against that. And so this new government tried to nationalize things, and they've been in that shift since then. So meanwhile, some Canadian Baptists had been kicking around in Bolivia as well. In 1898, the first Canadian Baptist went to Bolivia, and soon after a few others followed. At that time, that you had to be Catholic to be in the government or any kind of seat of power, and they passed the Religious Freedoms Law with the persuasion of some Protestants in 1905. CBM was gifted land by Lake Titicaca in the La Paz region that had surfs on it, and they were in a situation where they said, do we go with the cultural norm and just keep working it, or do we do something different? And they decided to give that land back to the people, the families who had been working on it for several generations. And people heard about that, and when that 1952 revolution came around, they approached the Baptist church and said, how did you do this in an equitable way, in a way that worked? And that stood out it made news at the time, and it was meaningful for the Baptist church and their own identity and formation. There was a martyr in 1949, a fellow Canadian and 8 other Bolivians went out to a rural area and were stoned to death by people who didn't want Protestants there. And that was, again, we've talked to pastors who were there, who since passed away since we've arrived, but who say how that was really formative in their own decision to become a pastor, hearing those stories. It made Time magazine at the time. And then throughout the second half of the century, there was a shift as well. Che Guevara, right, the Argentinian who went to Cuba, came to Bolivia to try and start a revolution. And the church said, what happens if something happens here and we all get kicked out? The Canadians had been sustaining churches through tithing, or through giving. And through a system of increasing the tithing or decreasing the giving, they made all the churches sustainable. Every year they decreased how much they were giving until it was fully in the hands of the local church. And now we don't have any property there. Everything is in the hands of nationals. So that was really a healthy shift. So today we work in a different way. We work through partnership. So we are always in a place, wherever we work in the world, be it Lebanon or Congo or India, it's by invitation. We're not employees, but we're also not the bosses. We come in inside and we look at how can we collaborate together in some way. And so we're looking to see where is God moving in the world and how can we participate in that? We recognize that we're not bringing God to the ends of the earth. He's already there. It's for us to go and to be a part of his ministry in that sense. Yeah? So that's kind of where we're at. But we've been sharing with some of you that 2018 was the last time we got to come back to Canada to share with churches. We were here last summer quickly to visit family. But a few things have happened since then as well. So I'll let you in on this. In 2019, the president, who I mentioned, who was led a lot of social movements, wanted to run for a 4th term. There was a lot of pushback around that, and when the election happened, there was accusations of fraud. The city shut down. All the streets were blocked, all the back alleys were blocked, there was no movement. So we were kind of stuck in this for a little bit. The president eventually fled first to a jungle region, and then he left the country altogether. Things were up in the air. Later on, an interim president came into power, but it was still a lot of unrest. And that was early 2020, and soon after that, something else happened. There's this pandemic, right? You might have heard of that. So when Bolivia had the pandemic, when it came down there, they weren't ready, I would say. How do I say this? They'd just gone through a lockdown politically, and they moved into a pandemic.
And the pandemic, like when we hear about how things were here in Canada, we're like, oh, okay, that's very different from what we experienced in Bolivia. The lockdown happened quickly and it was very strict. And so we were allowed outside of our apartment for 4 hours a week in the morning. So it was based on your ID card, what number it ended in, determined what day of the week you could leave. So Tim was Tuesday, I was Thursday. There weren't any vehicles allowed for some reason. So we would have to walk to pick up our groceries in that time. If you were under the age of 16 or over the age of 60, you weren't allowed outside at all. So it was a pretty heavy lockdown for several months. But the country was also unprepared. Its medical system was overrun. There were a lot of people who had underlying medical conditions, and so when COVID hit them, there was a lot of deaths. And so it was a very isolating time. It was a difficult time because there was so much need, but it was very difficult to actually get help to people. In these pictures on the bottom, you can see the women who are hugging. They were making a video to send to their friend who had just lost her husband to COVID in the first wave. And she was isolating. She couldn't see anyone, so she was completely alone. And so people were making a video, sending her hugs and letting them know that they were praying for her. The picture next to that is actually of the men's prison. And the prisoners are on the roof protesting because as COVID entered the jails, that particular jail is set up to be able to house about 300 people. There are over 1,000 people currently incarcerated there. So you can imagine the conditions were not such that you could have any sort of distancing, and everybody was getting sick, and they weren't letting doctors go in to treat them. And so they took to the roof and were protesting, saying, we're people, we deserve to be treated like people. So it was a very challenging time, just in terms of people suffering, the country trying to work through it, and us trying to figure out together with the church, how do we minister and how do we serve people in this moment? And we'll share a little bit more about that later.
So later on in 2020, there was another election. This fellow up in the top corner, his name is Luis Arce. He's from the same party as the previous president. He won. The lady down below was the interim president. She's now in prison. They felt that she broke the law during her time. It did bring some stability, having a new president, and things were good for some time. But more recently, there's been more tension. So the ex-president and the current president now disdain each other. They were great allies before. We follow them on Facebook, and they're at each other's throats saying some pretty horrible things. The opposition can't quite get itself together. There's been other challenges. These lines here are lines for gas. We have to wait right now 3 to 4 hours to try and get gas in our part of the city. They're having trouble getting access to importation. I won't go into it, but some of that's happening. And this August will be the next election. So we're curious what that means. But like Kallie said, the church is saying, how do we be the church in these times? So we have a few stories that hopefully highlight what it looks like to be the church of Bolivia. We hope you pick up two, that as much as we're there trying to support, it's really the church that drives CBM ministry, and it's the forefront.
Mm-hmm. So a big part about what we do in our ministry is call the local church to participate in mission. That we don't just believe the right things and we're done. We follow Christ. We participate in the gospel story that we've been invited into. And so we're going to share a few different stories about how the church is stepping into that story, how they're participating in sharing the good news. And the way that we talk about it at CBM, we use a term called integral mission. So it's the idea that mission is not just about sharing the gospel with our words and saving souls. The gospel we share with the way we live, with who we are, with the things that we do, and with the things that we say. And so our ministries try to touch on all those different points. And that it's not just to serve the people inside of the church, but it is outward focused, inviting other people, those in the community, to join in. And so we work with local churches there in Bolivia to kind of invite them into that mission with us. And one of the ways that we do this, we have our main partner in Bolivia is called the Bolivian Baptist Union. And they have different branches. They've got their local churches, and then they have an organization. It's called Obades. So it's kind of their mission branch, where they do all of their outreach work and compassion work, and then they also have the seminary. And so we have a program, a ministry, where we encourage churches to think, okay, what are the needs that we're seeing in our communities? And what are the resources that we have inside of our church? And what are some practical things that we can start doing to be able to reach out to the people in our communities in a holistic way? And so I just wanted to share with you a story about one of those churches that we've gotten the chance to work with recently. It's called Emmanuel Church. It's in the city of La Paz, which is the capital city, way up in the Andes Mountains. And this church is a rather small church that's kind of on the outskirts of town. So it's in a bit of a peri-urban area. And they really started to reflect on, who do we want to be in our community? How do we want people to see our church? And they thought, okay, what are the skills? What do we have to offer? And there were a few people in the church who were really passionate about kids. That was the area that they had gone to study in education and early childhood development. And so they started an after-school program for the kids in the community. School there is only like half days. So you either go in the morning or in the afternoon. And that means that you're sent home with a lot of homework. And a lot of kids struggle to do it on their own, or their parents aren't able to help them. And so this is a really practical way that churches can support people in their communities. So they started an after-school program with the kids. But then other people in the church thought, well, we've got a couple of medical professionals here. And they were noticing that people in these communities, while healthcare is available, they don't always know how to access it. They don't know who to go to, how to get appointments. There's a lot of fear around healthcare because oftentimes people wait until things get really bad before they go to see a doctor, and then it's too late. And so they think, oh, well, the doctor is where you go when you're gonna, if you go to the doctor, you'll die, kind of thing. And so there's a lot of fear around that. So they started a small clinic in the church where they attend about 1 day a week. But it's not just seeing people and giving them that bit of medical care, but also going with them, helping them understand, okay, so you should go to this doctor, I'll go with you, I'll help you get an appointment, and different things like that to help them access that care. Another person in their church saw another need. And it's amazing, because this is not a big church. But they said, there's so many seniors in our community who are just shut in. They're so lonely. They don't have anywhere to go when they leave their home. Their families have kind of left them, and we really want to do something for the seniors in our community. And so this person offered a plot of land that they had, and they've converted it into a greenhouse and a community garden. And so the seniors from the community come and they work the ground, they grow food for themselves, they give some of it to the children's project to feed the kids, and then the rest of it they sell to earn a little bit of income to do the upkeep for their projects. So it's a story of a church who thought, how do we be the gospel? How do we be the presence of Christ in our community? And this is what they came up with. And so what we'll do is we'll offer rather short-term funding, 1 or 2 years, for them to get the resources that they need to get these projects started. And we work with them around strategies for how they can be sustainable. So they're never really big projects that require a lot of funding after kind of initial startup costs. But these churches figure out how they can continue serving their community in ways that make sense for them, instead of trying to take on something that's really big and overwhelming for them. They just serve in practical ways that has been making a really big difference in their community.
Yeah, so that's an example of one church in the country, but there's quite a few. We probably have maybe 35 to 40 churches doing projects in different ways. And like Kallie said, the idea is sustainability. How do we help churches do something they can manage in the long term? Rather than having the big NGO with money come in, do something helpful, but then pull out and it all falls apart. So another project we have is called Ready to Read, where we've gone and found these projects that are often working with kids and equip them with a small collection of books. I noticed around your town here, you have lots of those little library nooks, right? So when we go to people's homes or to churches, we don't see any books. Your walls here are covered with them, right? It's quite common for kids just not have that resource. So we were able to equip them with some books, do trainings on the importance of early childhood reading and the impact there. They already have church members who are connected with people from the community, have kids coming into the church and ready to serve them. And so the books just are even kind of an easy win, right? And a way of giving a shot in the arm to churches who are doing their best to serve their community.
So we talked before a little bit about the context of the pandemic in Bolivia, but we wanted to share with you how the church responded and how they were able to participate in showing love to people during this really, really stressful time. One of the things that they did is we worked with churches and told them, we need you to identify the most vulnerable people that you can think of in your network. And so churches would come together, they put together their list and they say, okay, so these are the people that are really struggling. So, for example, people who work day to day earning just enough to live, and suddenly they're not allowed to leave their home. So they're not able to stock up on food. People with several children, or who just don't have other people who are around and available to help them out when they've been in this vulnerable situation. So the churches made their lists, and then they put together a list of what they needed to get for care packages to put together and bring out to these families, which was not an easy thing to do, because getting access to, it wasn't something we could do that was centralized. Each church had to think, okay, what's around us? What can we ourselves go and get? Because this happened all across the country. And then they had to strategize for how they were going to get together and put together all of this food into packages and distribute it, because you were only allowed out certain days. This woman at the top who's filling in bags, Miriam, she would wake up at like 3 in the morning before the police came out to guard and check people's ID cards, and she would walk several kilometers to the church and fill bags and get things ready. So they found their ways around it. Another way was that the military had passes to make it through checkpoints. And many youth do military service when they're done high school. And so we gathered some youth from the churches who were doing their military time, and Tim went out with them too, picked them up early in the morning, used their pass to get through the checkpoints, and go off to deliver these care packages to the different families. And it was really encouraging for me to hear the stories of people who received them. Just saying, I was at home praying because I had no food left and I didn't know what I was going to give my kids. And then all of a sudden the church came to my door and they gave me this blessing of food, and the stories of the faith that people had in those moments, and how God worked through the church to be able to meet the needs of those who truly needed him and were most vulnerable and didn't have any other safety net. Was something that was really encouraging to be a part of, to see churches move in that way. Another way that we call churches to participate is in, you guys have heard of SENT, or short-term missions. We encourage Bolivian churches to also participate in those missions with us.
They might not have heard of SENT.
SENT is what CBM calls short-term mission teams. It's our own lingo. But oftentimes when we have teams come down from Canada, we'll invite Bolivians to come and participate with us. But during these years of COVID, we didn't have very many people coming down. But what happened was the Bolivian churches from the cities were like, well, now we're kind of in this. We're in this idea of service. We want to come and participate. We want to go out and see this. And for a lot of them, it's just as much of a culture shock if they are not from that part of the country. And so we have churches who are coming out, who are participating, working in some of our rural projects, serving families, and becoming so passionate about it that as a church they've decided to start contributing financially, which is something that's not very common in the culture there. So to see them participate in mission and be so moved by it that they actually have been motivated to give and to fundraise, for us has just been really encouraging. encouraging. Another way that the church has participated. Some of you may have heard of this project. It's been around for many, many years. It's called the Casa de la Amistad Project. So it works with kids and teens who have a prison living who have a parent living in prison, sorry. And they come to this, it's right across the street from the prison. So that picture I showed you before of the men on top of the roof of the prison was taken from the window of this ministry. And they get help with their homework. They have a psychologist on staff who works with them because a lot of them have seen horrific things and have experienced a lot of trauma. They get food every day, and it's really a place where they feel safe enough to just be kids. So many of them have been forced to grow up way faster than they should. And so, yeah, it's a really beautiful ministry. And for quite a while, they have been receiving grants from the city of Cochabamba to cover all of the food. This is the only project in the whole country that works with this population of kids. And so the government recognized that as something that was very important and that they were going to contribute to. But during the pandemic, when the economy started to suffer, they said, we're sorry, we're cutting off funding. We're breaking our contract. And so they quit sending funds. And all of a sudden, we had no money in the budget to be able to offer food to these kids. And it was actually funny. There were some churches from Canada who sent extra money that enabled us to put together some food for these kids. And the director of the project made a thank you video to send to the churches in Canada. And she said, you know, the government funding was cut, and so we've been in a difficult position, and so I'm so thankful for these churches who have contributed. And we made the video, we put on the subtitles and posted it to Facebook. And the Baptist churches heard that the government funding was cut, and they got really angry. They started calling the government officials who were in charge of this and complaining and saying, how could you have cut funding to these vulnerable kids in the middle of the worst time where they need the extra support? And then one day I got a call from this government institution asking me to come into a meeting. And they said, you posted this video claiming this about us, and now the phone won't stop ringing. People are really upset with us. You need to take down this video. So I wasn't expecting that one. But the churches didn't just call and complain, which we appreciated. They actually started contributing. And so a lot of these churches were going through very difficult times themselves, but donations started coming in. People would send some bags of rice, bottles of oil, boxes of oranges, what they had, they offered. And different groups would come in to offer to cook for them, or it was really beautiful to see them rise up, and the encouragement that it gave to the staff there, and to the kids to know that they weren't forgotten, that people cared about them when they were in such a difficult position. It's gone over into a sustainable support from the local churches for the project. And so it should have collapsed. But God really intervened through the movement of his church there. So just another example of the church stepping into the story and sharing the good news in whatever way they can.
We have another project or ministry that focuses on environmentalism, and it's directed towards youth. I don't know what comes to mind when you hear the word youth, but for Bolivia it often means well into your 30s. I don't know, David, I think you could pass for a youth in the Bolivian context still. Yeah. So when they have a youth group, it's sometimes married people with a kid or two, right? At that time, in professionals. And as many youth are, they have a passion for environmental care. They also may have Christian faith, but not put them together, right? So we had a time where we were able to do theological reflection on what does it look like as a biblical basis for why we should care for our environment, and think it through theologically, and then think it through practically about how they, as church leaders, might want to respond. So depending on the city they're in, they can come together as a group, submit a project that's relevant to their location. So you see that large piles of garbage up at the top there. That's not too far from our house. Sometimes when there's blockades, garbage doesn't get picked up and things can quickly get overtaken. In the bottom right, there's another neighborhood kind of in the peri-urban part of our city where a pastor led some youth through a reflection on why does our neighborhood look like this. They called youth from other churches together and they started talking it through. Then they called the community leaders. They have neighborhood representatives that are elected, and they were excited that somebody wanted to respond and had a plan, so they started to do community pickups. The church paid for a sign that reminded people not to litter and to take care of the area, and it was kind of committing each other to caring for their neighborhoods that way. The local high school took note of this and invited church members and these youth to come in and do workshops on environmental care. They started soldering old oil drums and cutting them in half and turning them into garbage cans for recycling and garbage. And that's part of the problem is there aren't garbage cans because there isn't always garbage pickup. So having those tools in that way, and so that gave the church an in into the high school just down the street from them. And they're now just presented a project to do after school care for kids who have been selected by the schools needing a little extra help. So it's really fun to work with people who are passionate about these themes and helping them see how the church is relevant in that area.
Another example of the church getting involved that was really interesting to be a part of. When the war in Ukraine broke out, many Baptist churches started talking about how they were so concerned for people in Ukraine and the situation that they were going through. And Bolivia tends to be a pretty isolated place. They aren't involved in a whole lot internationally. And so when Tim and I kept hearing this being repeated over and over again, that people were really concerned, we said, well, would you guys like to do some sort of a fundraiser to help out with CBM? We're working with the European Baptist Federation to help refugees as they're fleeing. If you guys would want to do a fundraiser and donate to that, you would be able to help support some of these people that you're really concerned about. And for our partners there, this was something completely new to fundraise for and to send the money outside of their country and the needs that they were seeing in front of them to help elsewhere. And so they got very excited and went into full planning mode. They launched a challenge to churches across the country to do fundraisers so that they could bring them all of the money together to send on. And where we lived, they thought, okay, let's put on a big event. We'll make food. It's something that's common when they fundraise in Bolivia to make and sell food. But they thought, oh, but wouldn't it be great if we could make Ukrainian food? That would be really fun. And so we're like, oh, what a great idea. And I'm like, okay, who knows how to make Ukrainian food? It was me.
People from Saskatchewan.
And so I worked with the local Baptist women's groups. I taught them how to make pierogies and borscht, and we made 1,500 pierogies. And we put on a big fundraising event. It was a lot of fun. And for them, they're also, because they're not very involved in global matters, they don't have a lot of immigration, and so they don't try a lot of ethnic foods from outside of their own culture. So for them, it was new things on a whole bunch of different levels, but we were excited to see them kind of step out of their comfort zone and to try that out. I had to make some samples for them first to make sure that, okay, yes, we'll be okay making this, but we won them over.
We've also had a lot of ministry in the rural area over time. So in the center there, you'll see a home made of adobe. So David, when you came, you got to work on an adobe home, right? There's a disease in a certain part of the country called chagas, which is a parasite that's carried by a bug that can get into people's bodies and it, over time expands your organs. So for a while, what we've been doing is collaborating with health clinics and communities to put up plaster and lay down concrete, and then the bug can't live in the walls. And that's accompanied by a lot of different workshops as well. But by building relationship with communities, new opportunities come out of that as well. So in some of the workshops, we talk about strategic places where people would agree to go to the bathroom and not go to the bathroom because they didn't have any bathrooms, right? But there came the opportunity to start building what they call rustic outhouses, right? So you guys at Kaleden would know a lot about this, right? You're expert. You can bring your expertise down. So this is a picture of one that we like. They're all kind of different because they are made by the families themselves, but the idea is always the same, and we provide that kind of basic engineering idea and materials to help people think through how they can make this happen. But that brings a level of sanitation to the community as well, and there's a lot of pride in having a bathroom in a rural area. The kids there are working on drip irrigation system. The government had been giving out seeds to schools saying, hey, you should use these, and teachers didn't know what to do with just seeds. So we thought that through and talked it through with teachers, and through invitation we were able to build a greenhouse type garden next to a school with drip irrigation that allowed them to produce a bit more vegetables, things that hadn't been grown in the community. The kids and their parents look after it, so that food is consumed by the kids and provides nutrition. But a lot of parents have also taken note and said, I think I'm going to try growing some more diverse food, which could be good for the family as well, and it's been fun. During the pandemic, some of our funding couldn't get to projects the way it had originally been planned. And myself and another colleague, we wanted to do beekeeping for a long time. So we asked if we could redirect some of these funds towards beekeeping. We did a pilot, and it's gone pretty well. So I got to learn a lot about that. But they're out in wide open spaces, and if you know anything about beekeeping, it doesn't require a lot of time. So it's not that people are putting aside one crop to focus on this. It's another income stream that hopefully can help them get through difficult times. Some of the participants are well into their 40s or maybe 50, but others are kids who go to the grades 1 to 6 schoolhouse, stop going to school in their teens now, just farming with their parents. And so for them, it's been really exciting too to learn a new type of agriculture. There's a lot of excitement for them. I enjoy working with the younger kids in that area.
Another one of our projects, it's called ADA, which stands for Eagle's Wings in Spanish. And it works with the mothers of the kids who are in the CASA program. So all of these women have their partners or their spouses in prison. And at its core, it's a sewing workshop. And so we work with them, teaching them skills, sewing skills. We have a few moms who have been a part of it for years now and have really become experts themselves. We have a teacher who comes in once a week and works with them. And then every year we get new women in who are starting from absolute zero, who have never looked at a sewing machine before. And so they are taught by the teacher, and then the other moms come alongside. You can see the one picture where some of the more experienced moms are working alongside of the new moms, trying to teach them how to work the machines and get them to do what you want them to, which can be tricky sometimes. But we also do workshops with them are just around managing money, around marketing things, and then they ask for workshops on other stuff like violence in the home or how to discipline your children, different things like that. And it's just become this really beautiful community of women. It can be very isolating and stigmatizing to be connected with the prison system. It can be hard for them to find work. Their kids often get bullied. And a lot of these women feel very alone. And so to have a space where they can come together with other women who are going through those same things and offer one another support has just been life-changing for so many of them. During COVID, many of them were kicked out of their rented rooms because they weren't able to pay rent, and so their landlords would say, okay, you're out. And I got a call from one of them crying, saying, I'm on the side of the road with all my belongings and my 3 kids and I don't know what to do. And it was one of the other moms from the project lived a few blocks away from her, and she said, come, you can sleep on my floor until we figure this out. And so she went and helped her carry all of her things and invited her to stay with her. Another one of our moms, she's the one wearing the scarf in the top picture. Her name is Estella. And she's really been struggling with a malignant tumor on her ribs. And it's been a very difficult treatment process for her. The medical care system in Bolivia is very broken. And when they finally sent her to get some radiation treatment, it was in another city, and the women just rallied around her, trying to find people to look after her kids while she was getting the treatment. We were in the middle of a big order at that point, and each of the moms said, okay, I'm going to make this many from Estella's portion, and I'm going to donate the money from that back to her. So even though she can't work during this time, we're going to make sure that she's got some income coming in for her. So they put their own time in to make sure that that she was getting some income to sustain her family during a really difficult time. But the way that they cared for each other and loved for one another and offered what they had, even though it's not much, it's become this incredible community of women supporting each other and learning how to support themselves and their families as well. And so it's fun to watch them come up with new ideas and challenge each other. They decided none of them want to make the same thing, because then they'll be in competition with one another of who can sell more and who can do it better. And so they all come up with their own unique designs. And when one of them has enough things, they say, oh, but I have this other really good idea, and I think you would be really good at making it. And so they would give that idea off to one of the other moms. But yeah, they are actively loving one another, and it's beautiful to be part of.
So we've talked a lot about, I guess, being present in the community initiatives, right, and social projects. But the other branch of the work we are in is with the Bible school or seminary. So we both get to teach at the seminary in the city where we live. I serve on a board as well. And it's great to work with young people, many of whom intend to be pastors, and help them think through what's happening in the real world today. They often come with questions, bring that to the classroom. We can think that through using scripture. We can think that through in dialogue with one another, and help shape what ministry looks like going forward from that angle. There's lots of room for doing professional development with church leaders as well. So sometimes the seminary offers special courses directed at pastors who have been in the field for a while, or deacons or different leaders who have a desire for more biblical training on that front. In Bolivia, it's usually a 5-year program. You don't have to do the full 5 years, but the 5th year is a thesis year. So we get to work sometimes with students as well. Kallie right now has a thesis student that she's hoping will hand in her final product soon. Other times we sit on a panel. It's kind of like you hear at the master's or doctoral level. It's obviously not that level academically, but the students will base their work on what's happening in their neighborhoods. So it's very contextually relevant in that way too, thinking through what does it mean to do youth ministry today or work with women. Kallie teaches a class on mission, and she requires her students to do volunteer hours at a lot of these different projects that we've been mentioning too. So it's very eye-opening for people to go out in their own their city, town, and see what churches are doing and rethink again where the church is at. And perhaps there's church leaders who've never been to school who have a lot of wisdom and insight that they can share. And they bring these experiences back to the classroom and talk about them in that context. So that's been fun to see people really rethink what it means to be Christian in Bolivian society today, and see a new generation coming along. And lastly, another part of our ministry that Kallie and I have enjoyed is, we say, helping our friends meet new friends, have good friends, right? So we've been networking a lot, trying to help them connect with other Latin American leaders. So the fellows in the top right there, one is Bolivian, the other is from Colombia, and they're leaders in theological education. Last year we were able to have them come in and do an evaluation of our seminary, and they're doing some online courses that are directed towards church leaders. And they do theologians. One of them wrote a book called Theology with Latin American Soul. So again, it's kind of saying what we get it. Europe and the North America have a lot of theologians, but what's happening in our place, our time, and how do we understand Scripture? Other leaders are environmentalists. So there's one there from Guatemala, another from Panama, and they're really on the cutting edge of Christian theology and environmentalism. And so it's exciting for them to connect with our youth when we were doing that youth environmental project. It was really eye-opening, even for myself, to see the Latin American angle on some of this. At times we've been really closed off. A lot of textbooks are translated from English, but it's great to hear current thinkers in the Christian world, in the social action world, talking about how churches have done subtle things to speak up and for their community in that way. So we work at networking and trying to bring people together, sometimes online and sometimes, if we're lucky, in person as well. So that is a lot of information, right? Thanks for being attentive with us. That's our presentation, more or less, but we really appreciate that we've gotten to partner with you guys. This is our first visit here. We have a bit more to say, but I wonder if you have any questions. I should have said at the start, if you want to interrupt, you can, but but obviously you're very polite and waited till the end. Did you have any questions, or has anything come to mind and all that?
I'm trying to picture the locale. Like, are you working out of one main building, the church, and then you go to other places, or is this focused all around the city where you are, or do you travel, or what?
That's a good question. And I think one thing that can be deceptive here is it makes it sound like we do this all, right? That we're there. We are involved in some degree in these projects, but it's not us running everything. It's very much the church. So in our city, they have a place called the Baptist Center. That's where the denomination has its office. That's where Obadas, the mission development branch, would have an office. That's where we have an office as well. So those are kind of bigger organizations. In the same city, a ways away, is the seminary building, physically. And then throughout the country are churches. And one of the draws to working with churches is they are located in these different remote places. So we don't insist that churches have to do something, but if they have interest, we can go in, we can do trainings with them on why you might want to serve your community, help them think through the specific idea they have. A lot of times, again, the networking, we say, you know, there's another church doing exactly what you would like to do. Why don't we bring them in? And they're not anybody special, but they have a lot to share, right? When a church has been, if you've never done Sunday school before, having another church come in and say, this is how we do our Sunday school program, in that way. So putting people together in that sense and supporting them. But at the end of the day, it's in the hands of the church. And a lot of churches have professionals, knowledgeable people who just need a little bit of encouragement to get going in that sense. So it is a lot of stuff, right? And so if we're in a rural area, we have to drive out there. And we often are out there, but there are other partners who are always Bolivian who are at the forefront of this. It's not Kallie and Tim show, but we're good at speaking English, so they send us. But there are other people, and we don't mean to be the face of it all at this front. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So you speak mostly Spanish?
It's mostly Spanish. They do have, as mentioned, other indigenous languages. The prominent ones would be Quechua, Aymara, and Guarani. And so in different communities, there will be people who speak a mix of Spanish and another indigenous language, or sometimes they're only that language. And so we work closely with one colleague who he didn't learn Spanish till grade 6. And he's very, very smart and very sharp. And he has not only the language, but some cultural insight. I like to think that part of our job is to go in and ask a lot of questions, and maybe every 10th question or 20th question is a good one, right? Sometimes they're not the greatest questions, but we can help them think as outsiders. But we tend to learn more than we offer in that sense. But
yeah. You're mostly always speaking Spanish?
Spanish, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's very few people that we know that speak English. It exists, but it's not as prominent.
Yeah, good for you.
Thanks. Any other questions? A lot of info.
Everyone here is just too polite,
Yeah.
which is a bit of a surprise for me, but since I get heckled every Sunday. I had a question about the work that you're doing to prevent shagas.
Yeah.
Is there data on the effectiveness of that intervention of sealing up the adobe homes?
Yes. Do you want to tell a story?
I'll tell a story. There is. So we work, the way we choose which communities to work in is through the local kind of municipal leaders who are in charge of fumigation. So these communities, when they find this beetle, it's called the Venchuca beetle, they contact the fumigation branch of the government. They come, they look at the beetle, they see if it has chagas, and then they come and fumigate the home. But the problem with that is the bugs eventually become resistant to the fumigation, and so they come back sooner and sooner. And one of a more sustainable solution to the problem is to seal up the homes so that the bugs can't infest. But it's not just that. We talk with them about, or we provide the material for them to seal up the rooms that they sleep in. We also work with the community to ask them to move their corrals further from their homes, and kind of go through all of the different ways that they can work as a community to prevent it. There was one particular community that we worked in, and the government officials said, we would love it if you guys could work there, but I don't think they're gonna go for it. They have been notoriously hard to work with. They're very stubborn, and I don't think that they'll sign on to this. But as Tim said, we have a really excellent colleague who understands that culture very, very well, and he won them over. And so they signed on, and while they were stubborn, they were 100% on board when they got on board. And so they said, everyone in the community is going to comply with this. We're going to make sure that all of our neighbors move their corrals further from their house. We're going to make sure that everybody who needs help doing the renovations in their home is going to get the help. We're going to work together and get this done. The last time we talked to the fumigation specialist, he told us, we have not received a single call from that community since you guys went and did the work. And he said it's a miracle because they were drug-resistant bugs. It was one of the worst communities in our zone. And so while that's just anecdotal, I think it's a pretty good demonstration of when the whole community gets involved and participates, it's a very sustainable solution to the problem.
A lot of these health clinics have been trained by Doctors Without Borders. They have a program where they give cell phones to community leaders, and when the bugs are detected, they call in, they say where they're finding the most bugs, they bring them into a lab, they get tested to see if they have the parasite. And so when we select communities, we have that kind of data to follow up on. And in these communities, they found that there's less infection as well. When we do testings, after we plastered homes, we do testing, and almost 100% of the community will have Chagas.
Of the adults.
Of the adults. Some kids don't have it. And there's free treatment from the government. But like a lot of things, there's a barrier between, people aren't going to get the treatment. So we work with schools and with community leaders to help people bridge that gap, right? We're not the medical specialists, but we help people get there, and you have to do it for 3 months consistently. So we'll always start after Carnaval, which is a big event where a lot of drinking, because drinking and partying, you're not supposed to eat fried foods or consume alcohol. So right after the party, you start the treatment. It wasn't my idea, obviously, but other people had that insight, right, of when's the best time for people to follow through. It's just a little challenges to closing those gaps to making things come together. Yeah.
You say that you move the corral, so these bugs are living on the animals and then transferred? Is that how it happens?
Well, they suck blood, and so where there are living things, they will come. And so if you have a lot of animals coming in and out of your homes, or if you have them really close to your homes, then you're moving kind of the food source for the bugs closer to you, and they're more likely to come and infest the home. So if you seal off the home and then move the corral further away, talk to them about not allowing animals to come into their homes.
Often when we do home inspection, there'll be like a chicken on the bed, or there'll be that kind of deal. Yeah, like Kallie said, what they do is they suck your blood, and then they turn around, and after you've had a big meal, they do what we all like to do, and that's where the parasite is transferred. It's through their poo into your bloodstream. And so keeping the bugs out that way. Their kitchens would be an open fire pit too, right? So part of the training throughout the year is thinking about how to have a clean kitchen in that situation. Yeah. Yeah, so the project's called Integral Mission Initiative, so we call it IMI, I-M-I. We have a proposal they should fill out, but they can invite us and we'll do a training where we might do something like a problem tree, where you have a tree and you say, here's the problem here, these are the effects in the leaves, and these are the causes down below, so you think through that challenge. There's other activities like that you might do as a group. Who can you talk to? And the proposal will ask you these questions. I know as a church you're excited, have you talked to other people? Are other people already working on this? They submit a proposal to us. Ourselves, the head of this mission development group is on that little team, and the person from the seminary as well is on it. And we all review them together, and we might have comments or feedback and ask them to make some changes or not, and then it gets approved that way. So there is a proposal and a budget they have to fill out. And it also often asks them to put something towards it. So while we'll give them some funding, we'd like to see some funding come from the churches as well to show some buy-in.
And is that at a national level that you guys are working?
That's through, yeah, it's a national level. It's open to any church. So we can't be everywhere, but the churches can be. There's churches in really remote places. And so if they have a drive and desire, it allows us to get access to those places. And we also think that the church are the experts, right? If you live in a community, you just know it in a different way. Like when Kallie was sharing about some of the emergency relief during COVID, I might go in and say, everybody looks like they're in a difficult situation, but neighbors know this family's struggling a lot more than others, right? I think it's smart just to put the church at the forefront and say, you guys drive this, instead of waiting for outsiders to come and make things happen. We mostly just work with the Bolivian Baptist Union. The bigger projects we have will have some connection to other denominations, but that's our partner. That's the people who have invited us in that sense, yeah.
It wasn't always that way then, right? No, I mean like when CBM first came into Bolivia, it wasn't a matter of partnering with an organization that was doing work. It was like that old Western model of going in and saving unsaved countries.
Yeah, when in Bolivia especially, when the first Canadian missionary went there, he was the first Protestant, so there wasn't a church there to work with. However, there were other people who came before, but were not able to stay because they had a rather aggressive evangelistic approach that wasn't responded to very well. And with CBM, the approach was more holistic. They started schools, they started working with people in the rural areas, doing farming and things like that. I think at the point when he arrived, I think only 5% of children were being educated. And so they started making inroads into the community in those kind of ways. And so they built trust and were able to kind of share in that way. And that's why they weren't chased out of the country. And they were able to kind of make inroads. But it was pretty quick after they started kind of planting churches that work was made to hand over ownership to the locals. Even before it was kind of officially handed over, it was very intentional about wanting it to be a Bolivian kind of owned denomination and not run by the Canadian people who were there. So there's a long history of a really, I think, healthy collaboration between
Yeah, I
Canadians.
think your question is valid, and I think missions is a little checkered past, right? We think through today there's a lot of reflection on what does decolonization look like and doing things in a new way. But in a lot of ways, Canadian Baptists and their partners have been a little bit more progressive in making sure that nationals were the pastors were leading. I'll give an example of the seminary where we work. Besides ourselves is all national staff. There's another seminary in town where the director is a guy from the US. He's well educated and he's easy for me to work with because he speaks English. But our directors have been, for 40 or 50 years, have all been Bolivian. So it's in the hand of the local church in that way. And if their goal is to make the best theologians in the world, they might not be the cutting edge, but if their goals are making pastors who are ready to serve here and now in smaller communities, in the real world, I think it's better to see leaders that way. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys very, very much. How long do we have to wait till next time?
Not as long as churches have had to wait this time. Now that we have Melina's passport, we'll be coming back to visit churches a lot more often.
Awesome. So you guys are here kind of all week, right? And you're looking to relax. And so let's get some ideas from the group here. What are the best things to do while you are in the South Okanagan? Tickle berries. Linden Gardens, yeah. Yeah, mentioned those two things already. What else? Maybe local landing. I think Melina's old enough for that. Is it open? Yeah.
Maybe open on the weekend.
Yeah. Is that it? We just got like 2 or 3 things. KVR. The kangaroo farm? Oh. Too far. Yeah, I was seeing it being constructed. Is it done? Okay. Okay. Great. Well, thank you everybody for coming. If you have like this thought as you leave, oh, I should ask this, text me. And they're here all week, so I'll find out from the source. Any other questions you have for us?
How old is your church? How long have you guys been around here?
1900? Well, the building is what, 1915? The building's 1910? Over 100 years. Yes. Over 100 years old. Like this exact like space we're in was built like, yeah, 1910. I thought it was 1915, but I thought it was after the old hotel. But maybe you're right. You should know. You're a Kaledenite, true and true. No? Yeah, anything else? Any other questions?
So most of you live right in Kaleden? Are you a little bit out?
Yeah, I think everybody except the Noons. But they're fighting. They'll get back here eventually. They were here for a little bit, had a little stint, and then they're in Penticton. But yeah, most of the people that attend this church are from Kaleden, but we are attracting some outliers because they come here and they find a nice, warm, friendly, safe place to re-experience church. So, and we're pretty happy with that. Oh, 1913. Oh, okay. Well, we're both wrong. Right. Okay.
So it wasn't built, the church. The church started in 1913.
Yeah.
1913. I looked up on the website.
Thank you.
That was probably very
Yeah. Okay. Have a great evening. And if you want to share this with anybody, it'll be on YouTube. It's already on YouTube, actually. And make sure just to take your stuff with you. We don't really have a place to wash dishes right now. So have a great night. Enjoy the sun. See you. Well, I won't see you Sunday. Oh, yeah, I wanted to mention this. So on Sunday, I'm not here. I'm in some training for the fire hall, but we're gonna show the video of when I was in Bolivia. Yeah, and it'll give you like a really great sort of flavor for what the mission work is there for the area, and it even has like me getting lost or being abandoned by my team leader. Why was I abandoned? You'd have to ask her.
What did you do?
So, okay, good night, everyone.